This is what we need to do with all the incels. Just get all the incels and have them go audit the police. I would give them something to do at least.
It's not a bad idea. And if they end up getting shot, is it really that much of a loss? They weren't going to contribute to the gene pool anyways.
No.
So auditing has been the new thing that I have gotten super, I don't know, the almighty algorithm knows me too well, and it started suggesting these videos, and I have gotten hooked. This is my new favorite thing. God, it could be like Oprah's new favorite thing. Yeah, these guys are
dorks.
Have a very libertarian bent. It could be pretty cringy to watch. Well, we'll go ahead and just play the first clip if you would.
How's it going, sir?
Hey, how you doing, officers?
Good. Not bad.
That's
good, yeah. Can I get
some
badge numbers?
Sure, can I have your ID, please?
No, you can't.
Excuse me.
Have you not heard that before?
I've heard it plenty of times. It's just I'm surprised because, well, my name and my badge number's right here. Okay, you see it?
Tibbets?
Yep, 640.
The pen is blocking the number.
Digging the American, what does it call it? Like a baklava?
Here is a First Amendment protected activity.
Like the dust protector mask?
But listen, if you violate that in any way and interfere with that,
I'm not violating it. They asked you to leave.
Yeah, but they can't ask me to leave. This is a public library. Can I speak to a supervisor, please?
After immediately showing their disdain for the public and our
all right, that's good.
Long Island.
These guys.
Yeah, they're the best.
I feel bad for the cops. I don't like to feel bad for cops.
These men are American heroes. All right, so auditing. What is auditing? Auditing is going out basically and exercising your rights in a public manner in what's often, I guess, kind of a confrontational manner to ensure that the people working for government, whether they be clerks at a county courthouse, police officers, whatever, understand the laws that they're supposed to be enforcing and respect your constitutional rights. Auditors in general, they're usually, they go out and they exercise their First Amendment rights with filming in public, saying stuff that could be offensive towards people, but wouldn't be considered harassment. You also have like Second Amendment auditors. They're pretty awesome too. These are guys that will strap an AK-47 to their back and just go strolling through a park. And a cop comes up and they're like, I have a Second Amendment right to carry this. And yeah, and they push the cops, and it's supposed to be an educational thing for everybody, for the police, for the people that watch these videos, so that you understand what your rights are, and so you could teach the cops what they are. Because as we know, cops are always trying to kind of push the envelope back and push back on your personal rights to make their job easier so that they can violate you or whatever. But yeah, essentially it's the open exercise of a right, generally the First and Second Amendment, in the presence of government officials, often police. It also has the added benefit of documenting police behavior so that the officer or department can later be educated as to the constitutional rights of citizens and their role as law enforcement.
So I'm assuming that these auditors are credentialed in some way. They have specific training. They know the laws well, I presume.
That is a thing that could be said. That's a thing that they would say about themselves, yes.
I know. He's a fucking one.
I'm telling you right now, fucking 5 years ago with this shit, he would have been on the fucking ground.
Absolutely.
10, 15, 20 years ago, that motherfucker would be dead. He'd be fucking his teeth if he missed.
Officer Utter may have just
all right, that's good.
Testified against him.
How'd they? What happened here?
The point of an audit, you go out, you would start filming in a public place, for example. This guy, he was filming in a public library, which is a public place, and you do not have an expectation of privacy in public, so it is legal to film. Any public buildings are owned by everybody, so if you're allowed to be there, that means you're allowed to film there, and that's what this guy was doing. He had this police encounter. Oftentimes, you'll end up in these police encounters where the police will violate your rights to some degree or another, and then the person doing the auditing will end up requesting body cam footage, will end up requesting all the information having to do with the encounter. So that's what this guy got in this particular one. He ended up requesting the body cam footage from some of the police officers that illegally and forcibly made him leave the library, and he ended up filing a suit against them. And yeah, so this body cam footage had these two cops that were involved in the incident talking back and forth. 5 years ago, this motherfucker would have been on the ground. 20 years ago, he would have just been dead.
True.
It is true, and I think it's great to have stuff like this out there for the public, for people to hear about it, because this is how they talk about us, when they're speaking to one another. And as cringy as it is to go into a library and just obnoxiously film, like, it is your right. And these guys are not necessarily, I don't think they're necessarily worried about the right to film in a library, but they're just trying to exercise the rights so that they don't lose them. It's important for people, including police, to know this is something we can do and you can't stop me from doing it.
Usually they don't release the body cam footage.
It seems like it's easier to get body cam footage than I suspected. I mean, once body cam footage, just like anything else having to do with the government that's not classified, is public information. And in most cases, you should be able to just file a Freedom of Information Act request, and all this should be given to anybody that requests it.
They have to actually give it to them, though.
Yeah, so sometimes they'll have like certain holds or stays on it. You'll have to fight it in court, but the default position is that this is public information. This is a public record, and that anyone is entitled to it. And the onus is on the state, if they want to withhold it, to show cause why it needs to be withheld. I mean, they can hold it up and they can make it difficult for a little bit to get it, but more often than not, it will end up being released to the public because it's ours. It's our public record. We paid to have it filmed. It's somebody that we're paying to do that.
It's just interesting. The cop forgot to turn it off, I guess. So that's why they probably can't edit it or really fuck with it once it's recorded, probably in the cloud or something.
Yeah, ideally, that's how these things work. I mean, I guess you just wear it long enough, you kind of forget it's there.
That guy was a douche. God, don't be a fucking asshole in the library. It's everybody's library, dick.
Do it in libraries more often. Good educational value to this.
People are reading books, man. It's a sacred space.
Okay, yeah. So an example of an audit would be like this: video recording police in a public building, courthouse, police station, library, wherever, during a traffic stop, during someone else's traffic stop, during your traffic stop, or any other police engagement. As I was saying, the legality of video recording in public has been challenged numerous times in court, and so far has been very strictly upheld, with slight exceptions. There are certain buildings where certain buildings where video recording is prohibited. In these cases, it has to be posted ahead of time, and there has to have been some sort of actual legislation passed by the state where they show cause why it can't be. There can't be recording going on there. And a lot of these guys have challenged particular things like that. They've went to courthouses that will have a sign that says no recording. They'll say that it's their courthouse policy, and these guys will go in there and record, challenge that because the courthouse does not get to make that policy. They do not get to infringe on people's free rights. That's something for the government to do. They're the only ones that can infringe on our rights.
Well, you're saying it as if it can't change, but it has started to change. Arizona, for example, just passed a ban on filming police within 8 feet after a verbal warning is given. They just passed it last month. Arizona is getting pretty fucking wacky, dude.
There are a few places where they've passed ordinances restricting the extent to which you can film in public or film police in particular, which is what a lot of these have to do with. I don't necessarily have a problem with those. Like, it makes sense during a police stop if the guy is dealing with a DUI arrest or something that you can't get right up in his face, 3 feet away from him and record. But I don't know, 8 foot, it seems more than fair to me. So I don't have a problem with
slippery slope, man.
It is a slippery slope. You just gotta watch your step is all. And that's why you need these brave Americans out there testing the waters and pushing the limit to make sure that we don't slide too far down the slope.
They're the vanguard.
They are.
Yeah. These guys have to be like straight edges, because nobody I know that fucking does illegal shit would be doing this.
That's what my issue is. Like, I would go out there and then they'd pull my record up and they'd be like, "Oh, Mr. Cantrell, we'll find something in your house, in your possession to get you on.
If not, they'll plant some shit
some
on
old,
you.
Yeah, some old court fee that you forgot to pay or something like that."
Found this 8 ball here. What was this doing here, buddy?
You want to play the next one?
You're wrong. I can videotape him and I can videotape you.
No, he's a civilian.
What does that mean?
He's a private human being.
So what does that mean?
What do you mean, what does that mean? Have a good day. Carry on.
Why don't you have a good day? There is no...
I just love watching these.
Who?
I can't watch it, dude.
Did you just call me a
I could
loser?
do this all. I do this. This is like past few weeks while I'm working. I'll just have this playing in my earbuds all day long.
It's so cringe, man.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love it.
Jimba, did you just call me a loser?
License and registration, please. What's your ID?
Did you just call me a loser?
You just approached the cruiser after I asked you not to. Do you have an ID on you, please, sir?
Did you just call me a loser?
Not illegal to approach a cruiser.
So can you call your supervisor?
I already have.
Okay, I'll wait
Listen,
for him.
you're very close.
I'll wait for
You
him.
should not walk up to police vehicles.
Why are you walking up to me?
He has to give him his ID, though.
Not if it's not a stop and identify state, no. So there's a handful of states that are stop and identify. Kentucky's not one of them. Unless you're operating a motor vehicle, you do not have to ID yourself. I'll get into this later on. Yeah, so this is another instance of an audit. This guy, I forget the exact context of this conversation, but he was out filming. Cops come up, ask what's going on. The cop ended up walking away back to his vehicle. The guy follows him up there recording, and we see a famous tactic of the police in these audits where they'll get frustrated with the auditor videotaping them, often from a distance, and they'll start walking towards them, telling them that they need to get away from them. Oh, you're getting too close to me. You're getting too close to me, as the cop is walking towards them. This is, I guess, when the point when the cops get frustrated enough that they're trying to find some reason to arrest you, and saying that you're in too close proximity of them puts their safety in danger, so they just walk towards you so that you're very, very close to them.
See, this is what I don't understand about this whole thing, because the cop, it doesn't matter if the cop's right or not about the law. The cop just arrests you, charges you, throws you in jail, and then you have to defend yourself and prove that you didn't commit a crime. He doesn't have to be right. It doesn't matter if you audit him or not. He can just do whatever the fuck he wants to do.
Well, so that's why you have a camera on, and hopefully you're in a state where they require body cams on the police, your local police.
Yeah, but you're going to sit in jail till you fucking go to see the judge, at least get bonded out.
Definitely, some people do. Some people will. There's been auditors that have sat in jail for weeks before on disorderly conduct charges, which are that's kind of like the catch-all term that you get an auditor on is disorderly conduct, because it's such a vague, amorphous charge that it kind of applies to anything, even though it doesn't really apply to anything at all. So that's what a lot of these guys do. Is they will challenge the police in the street like this to make sure that they understand that the laws that they're charged to uphold, and these guys will also challenge the police in the courtrooms. There are several big auditing channels that these guys are backed by lawyers, and they will do these things on purpose. They go out and they will challenge police and let themselves get arrested. The guys that would do stuff like this, they're generally a lot more well-versed in the laws and the specificity of what they are and aren't allowed to do. And yeah, they'll have themselves be arrested so that their lawyer can go in and file a civil rights case against the city, county, whatever it is, and hopefully educate these people that way. And there have been a lot of these guys that have gotten big paydays for illegal detainments, violations of the Fourth Amendment, which protects you against unwarranted search or unreasonable search and seizure, violations of your Second Amendment right, which is right to bear arms, violation of your First Amendment right, which is freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And, these guys are acting as members of the press in this instance.
This is what we need to do with all the incels. Just get all the incels and have them go audit the fucking police. I would give them something to do at least, instead of sitting behind their keyboards all day.
It's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all. And if they end up getting shot, is it really that much of a loss? They weren't going to contribute to the gene pool anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah. So this is an expression. These guys are First Amendment auditors. This is ultimately an exercise of your First Amendment right to freedom of the press. And you were asking earlier, like, what does it mean to be in the press? Are these guys credentialed? That's the great thing about the press, is there is no credentialing. Any organization that calls themselves a press organization can issue their own credentials, and they're just as valid as any other. So we here at Exploding Star Podcast, we can issue our own little cards and give it out to anybody, and it would be just as valid as a card from the New York Times or CNN, in that everything's equally valid.
I don't know how I feel about that. It's got to be some media organizations that you provide a little bit of accountability to media organizations, or
gatekeeping. Is that what you're arguing for?
Maybe.
You want Jeff Bezos gatekeeping the media? Okay. You want to go to the 2A?
How to audit.
Now that you're done, can you look at it and see if he gave us his name, man? I don't think he gave us his name. Look, man, I don't know why you're being difficult, man. If you just cooperated, we'll be out of your hair in about 2 minutes. You know what I mean? That's all it takes. Just a little cooperation. We're just, no, man, look, I get you think it's funny. We're just doing our jobs.
I actually find it quite hilarious.
Okay. So, that's your right, man. I'm just trying to do my job.
You're right.
Okay.
Have a good day.
I'm having a great day.
Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of it. Okay. If you want to film, you can back up and film. But if you don't need anything from me, I don't need anything from you. So I'm asking you just to step back. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, man, can I just ask you, can you just go ahead and take off?
No, I'm gonna sit right here.
Okay, then I'm gonna sit right here.
I'm allowed to sit right here.
I'm allowed to sit here
Okay,
too.
you're right, you are. But you can't be over here harassing people.
Harassing a public employee?
But you don't need anything from me.
I do. I need your
Okay.
ID. Just
And-
so I
and
know, because, man,
I-
I don't know that you're a police officer. Right now, you're just wearing the costume.
Leave that man alone. What the fuck is his problem?
All right, that's good.
Sitting there trying to watch sitting there trying to watch videos, man.
Trying to watch his porn
Yeah.
in front of a elementary school like any other God-fearing American. Had this guy harassing him. So there are a number of different ways to audit, obviously. So we watched the guy that goes into the library. There are people that are very confrontational when the police come, start calling them pigs, tell them to fuck off. There's guys that do kind of the funny ones like this, where you go up and you jokingly use the cop NPC script with some random cop sitting somewhere. But yeah, like I was saying earlier, the important thing is to know the laws of your state. So Kentucky, for example, is not a stop and identify state. Unless you're the driver in a vehicle during a traffic stop, you do not have to identify yourself unless there's suspicion of a crime being committed. Police can come up and ask you, and you can say, no, I choose not to identify, because identifying without reasonable suspicion of a crime would be against your will, and without reasonable suspicion of a crime would be a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. That's considered an unwarranted seizure. They're seizing your personal information, your personal property, your ID or whatever. So the police will ask, they will lie, they will threaten for information like that, but it's important just to know the laws beforehand so that you know what information you're required to give. And then, just if you want to give that information, you can, but oftentimes in these situations, they don't. It's important to know that suspicion is not a crime. The police will say you're acting suspicious. Suspicion is a highly subjective term. Notify the police that suspicion is not a crime, and you need to ask them, what crime do you actually suspect that I am doing? Just being suspicious, just being out here recording in public is not a crime. It is not indicative of any crimes. Next, we come to what is called reasonable articulable suspicion. So at a certain point in the altercation, you're going to want to leave. You're going to want the cop to leave, and they're going to tell you, no, you need to ask, am I being detained? Being detained is a legal state that you're in that is where you are not free, but you are not under arrest. So it's a temporary hold placed on you by the state, temporary restriction on your freedom of movement after there has been a reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime for the officer to investigate you. So if you feel the encounter is going somewhere you don't like, that's when you need to ask if you can leave. Then you're being detained. At that point, your Miranda rights kick in. That's when you can stop completely identifying. Now, they may go ahead and seize your property. They may seize your wallet. They may find out who you are at that point. But that's kind of out of your control, because you're basically, you're under the control of the state at that point.
So why should you not give them your ID? The only explanation I could think of is if you have like a outstanding warrant, you wouldn't want to identify yourself.
Yes, I mean, I guess in
for practical
normal
purposes.
circumstance, for practical purposes, I don't know. I mean, if you don't trust the police in general, if you think that they could be trying to cause problems for you, if they could be trying to look for some reason to hold you, I mean, you don't know. I'll use myself as an example here. You don't know how screwed up their records are. You may have had something in the past that was taken care of, and they just haven't updated their records. And, you giving them your name and your information pulls up their faulty records, which could end up potentially getting you in trouble. The reason that the auditors do this is just to make that point, that this is not required information of you. And if you do detain me, if you do arrest me based on me exercising my constitutional right to not have my property, my information, my effects seized, we'll end up taking you to court for a civil rights case at that point.
The other thing I'm not clear on is detainment. Now, as Miranda rights kick in, I'm assuming that that's basically the same as being under arrest. They're able to start rifling through your pockets and shit. And of course, if you ask them if you're detaining me, they're going to say yes every time, of course. Unless they're a cop who actually knows the law and has dealt with this shit before.
Often not. Often a lot of these cops, they don't understand these legal distinctions. And it is, it's quite a lot to learn and to understand. And this is why auditors do this stuff. It's a great teaching tool, right? If a cop ends up getting a civil rights case over something like this, then hopefully they learn then. A lot of these guys end up having conversations. They end up getting departmental policy changes, more education about the rights of citizens in their community and how the cops need to approach them.
Yeah, This shit should really be common knowledge. It should be taught in public education for the safety of the public as well as just upholding constitutional rights.
Yeah, so detainment happens after there's reasonable suspicion, but before probable cause. Probable cause is what they need for arrest. Reasonable articulable suspicion is what they need for detainment.
That probably falls under the same sort of like time limit scenario.
That's what it is. A detainment has to be brief and cursory, but it is something where if they have suspicion of a crime, and then that's when your Miranda rights would start to kick in, and that's when you would need to start exercising them, because you always need to exercise certainly your right to remain silent around police, because they're not there to help you. They're there to try to arrest you.
Got to get the bad guy, Tony.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons people do this. Some people do it for the educational value of it, and it does have educational value. Some people do it to get paid, son, and some people do it just for the love of fucking with pigs. And I can respect all those. So there was one guy, I wasn't able to find the footage of it. There was one YouTube auditor that ended up getting shot and killed for doing it.
No, that's hard to believe.
So be careful. Be careful if you're out there doing that.
So I was just filming a synagogue here and getting a lot of the architecture and all that. Oh! Shot me! Shot me in the leg!
There's a warning shot. You keep doing that, I will charge you for real.
That's how they get you. They're under the goddamn ground.